Good morning and welcome to this week's Scots in Us podcast. We're taking a look back at the Scottish North American Community Conference and a wonderful segment we did around ecotourism, eco-sustainable fashion. And during that time, we spoke to Lord Thurso around ecotourism and to Siobhan Mackenzie, Clare Campbell, and Chris Hunt, leading proponents of sustainable fashion, around all that was going on. This morning, we're going to catch up with Siobhan Mackenzie, who's going to tell us how certain points within that conversation have progressed and how she is taking on 2022. And so let's begin. On behalf of the committee, I would like to welcome Lord Thurso to SNACC. Lord Thurso is chairman of VisitScotland and serves ex officio as a board member to Visit Britain. Lord Thurso has spent the majority of his life connected to hospitality industry. At 27, he became Europe's youngest five-star hotel manager as managing director of the Savoy Group's Lancaster Hotel in Paris, going on to lead a number of hospitality businesses, including Blakely's Hotel of Cliveden, which became the UK's highest rated hotel under his leadership. Lord Thurso is also chairman of his family company in Caithness. He sat in the House of Lords between 1995 and 99, and from 2001 to 2015 was MP for Caithness, Sutherland, and Easton Ross. In 2003, he was awarded Katie for his services to tourism, was made an honorary DBA by Oxford Brookes in 2004, and is a master innkeeper, a fellow of the Institute of Hospitality, and is president of the Tourism Society. In 2014, he was made Privy Councillor by Her Majesty the Queen. And so good morning, Lord Thurso, and thank you for joining us today as we begin turning our focus to responsible tourism. Over to you.
Camilla, good morning, and thank you very much indeed for that impossibly long and large introduction. It's quite terrible. But anyway, a good morning to everybody in North America for the Scottish North American Community Conference. It's an immense pleasure for me as chairman of Visit Scotland to be able to be with you almost in person through the medium of Zoom and to bring you my very warmest greetings from my home on the north coast of Scotland, where I can tell you it's actually a rather sunny but very cold day, but the wind is getting up and the North Atlantic is lapping at the foot of the house. But it's glorious to be here in Scotland. I have tremendous memories of having visited the conference in Chicago a few years ago. And I must say, however wonderful digital virtual Zoom is, there's nothing quite like being able to meet people in person. And I really, really hope that before my time is up, there will be an opportunity for me to come back to one more conference. But let me say how brilliant it has been of you to do so much hard work to put this marvelous conference together. The hardships of COVID-19, the pandemic, have been felt all across the world. And it's marvelous to see how you've responded in bringing this wonderful 3-day conference into being with such a rich and wonderful and varied program. And I'm delighted to be on the agenda and be able to tell you something about what we're doing. Very quickly, just say that the pandemic's obviously had a devastating effect on tourism here in Scotland. Obviously, international tourism has hardly happened at all. We did have a good domestic season, which was very helpful. But of course, with the latest Omicron variant, we don't know what's going to be happening. But I am sure that the time will come when we will be able to welcome all our tremendous diaspora friends from all around the world back to Scotland. And in that regard, what we've been doing is trying to keep the message of Scotland and everything we have to offer fresh in people's minds by going to them with videos and other ways, talking to people, telling them what we've got and saying how much we look forward to seeing them when we can. I'm delighted that the session coming up is about responsible tourism. This was actually an initiative I started about 4 years ago. And of course, it's been brought into sharp focus by COP26 and the clear need to deal with the climate emergency. But it's around, Janie Newman's going to tell you all about it, our responsible tourism manager, in a moment. But it's really about focusing on sustainability, both of the product and sustainability of communities. And I hope we'll have a chance to talk about that a little later on after you've seen that. And of course, 2022 is going to be Scotland's Year of Stories. We have our themed years, and I can't think of anything more appropriate than for people who like Scotland, people of Scots descent and Scots ourselves, to be telling stories. You know, the warm peat fire, the glass of malt, and ach aye boy, do you remember? It's all part of our culture, and there's huge different ways in which that's going to play in.
Welcome, Siobhan.
Hi, Camilla. How are you?
I'm not too bad. And so where are you joining us from today?
I'm joining you from London.
Right. And you're very busy at the moment. There's a lot going on. So I went to your website, which is looking fabulous, all redone for this post-pandemic world at last, let's hope. And also the news that you have been asked to lead on the 2022 Scottish team's Commonwealth uniforms. Is that correct?
That is correct, indeed. So I'm designing the tartan, the menswear and the women's wear for Team Scotland for the Birmingham Commonwealth Games this year. So that's going to be in July. It's very exciting to have sort of my full creative input from the very beginning, as I've worked with them before. I worked with them in 2018 in the Gold Coast Games, where I designed the women's wear. And before that, in 2014, as I graduated, I was actually a technical assistant, just like doing alterations and things behind the scenes, which kind of sparked my interest in the games and that kind of like patriotic feeling of like supporting Scotland. So yeah, so I got involved then, and it's such a nice kind of journey to have started as a student and then now have the full design journey, really.
But we met, I think it's 6 years ago now, because you were awarded the best new Scottish designer of 2016, just as you graduated. And you came out here and everybody was so excited for you and by your designs.
That's right. Yeah. Well, I graduated in 2014 and started my business, and then I won the award in 2016. So pretty like quickly after I started the business, I won it. So it was a great accolade to have and kind of catapult my name.
And one of the things that I've always loved is that you do not only do bespoke and these wonderful, unique one-off designs, you also do a regular range. And it's full of great innovative ideas around the kilt, from having the tartan inside the pleats to these new blocks of, I love the one with the tartan and then the leopard. And these are all available on your website. So we can take a look at those at the end of the program. But that's really great. And also some new products you're doing as well around the scarves and different things.
That's right. I did the scarves kind of during the pandemic, is something that's a bit easier to sell and easier, you know, it's a giftable product, a scarf, and it doesn't need to be a specific size. And especially when people weren't particularly buying outfits for going out or anything, it's nice to have an accessory. So I designed them around then. And then, yes, my latest collection of kilts is actually utilizing leftover tartan silks that I had, and the leopard was a leftover silk also, which is a really important part of my business too, because my dad is an environment officer and has been for 33 years. So I was brought up with the way of not wasting anything. So some of these silks I have had as leftovers for years, and I don't throw anything away. So when I actually looked through kind of my stock of silks, I thought, oh, I could make some really nice products out of this. And so that's what I did. I utilized fabrics that would have otherwise been waste, and made these beautiful silk kilts, if I do say so myself.
Good. So let's now begin by listening to this wonderful interview we were able to do with you in November as part of the Scottish North American Community Conference, which we're going to hold again this October, and I hope that we'll be able to speak with you and Chris and everybody again then. So let's begin then, and then we can take a few questions. I have a few questions for you the other side. I think all of you are such great voices. You've all got on planes or gone to things and been vocal about what's going on. I do have to ask you though, and I apologize if this is already happening, but is there a move? Do you have a tag, an icon like Harris Tweed does that says this is an eco-friendly, sustainable garment that's been made, or whatever you're going to call it? Is there anything that can show that this is being made in a responsible way?
Yeah,
because I think that matters for a lot of people now.
Yeah, I think it does. I mean, do you want to take that, Claire or Siobhan? Or
I was just going to jump in and agree with Claire what she was saying about the legislation about things. Was I think what people don't realise is to tag something as made in Scotland, all that really needs to put on is things like the buckle and the label. So I think both of us especially would be so for actually having some mark or label that shows the whole product's made in Scotland, and actually, because then people say, oh, but that's made in Scotland and that's made in Scotland, but your prices are totally different. Whereas actually, when your whole product's made in Scotland, obviously that's going to be coming at a different cost to something when the label's sewn on in Scotland. So that protection, I think, would be really, really important. And I know there are some people trying to get that.
Scotland does carry such weight. That's number one. So made in Scotland over a kilt made in China or something. It's hands down, even before they get to understanding the dyes and everything else. But what you're talking about is how you're making these things, and what's behind it, and what Scotland believes in. And I think great.
And it's where the fabric is from, the person who's it's that whole journey that people know, even through to when you showed or when you did the photo shoot to go in the lookbook, that all of that was there, that the waste from the photo shoot even was all very minimal, if non-existent. And a lot of the location companies and stylists, when you're doing production now, I mean, it's in your nature, because this is, we're talking about protecting our home, aren't we? So I'm glad to say it's become increasingly rare that you come across somebody who isn't asking, are you using public transport or electric cars to get to a shoot? All of these questions are becoming more commonplace and more important. But on the issue of the sort of the brand mark or an icon, what I am aware of, I'm sure there's many people have been, I've heard conversations like this when I used to be in the Scottish Textiles group years back. I don't think it's called that anymore. But sorry, showing my age there. But I think what I am aware of is that the redesign.scot platform that I'm doing, we are in talks we're somewhere along the journey at launching a sort of fashion.scot brand, which will be various things, but essentially it will work like a membership accreditation scheme. And I'm in talks with, we have fantastic organisations like Fashion Revolution Scotland, which is sort of run on a voluntary basis by Nikki Taylor, who was one of the original design collective members back in 2000 and something. And then we have Sustainable Fashion Scotland as well, which is a membership community that popped up just around about the start of lockdown. They managed to have their launch party about a week before lockdown. So we've been working quite closely with them on it. What would accreditation mean? Because you also want to reward people who are starting on the journey.
But you've got it with responsible tourism. That they're saying to people who are looking after, are doing a bed and breakfast, wherever it is, that they are being responsible. They're being accredited, I believe, through Visit Scotland. But I think it would really be great, because I love what you're doing, Siobhan, with the reusables, and everything you do around everything in the mill is about that.
Yeah, I mean, just to kind of some historics on it, and I think things have changed significantly in the last couple of years. So being a trustee of the Scottish Tartan Authority, they've been very keen, not a mark of quality, but a mark of integrity and authenticity.
Yes.
So that is a woven in Scotland tartan mark. So what you're up against in some respects is that you have a very small industry, and you've got to try and get your voice across to the policy, the decision makers, to get that legal kind of framework and approval to put in place. So it started with obviously the Scottish Register being officially recognised in 2008. So they have worked with a degree of success, but it's been very, very difficult for a lot of these mills to be taken seriously, which is really quite difficult with politicians, my pals, who I email on a regular basis. They see my name and go, "Oh my goodness, here she comes." But it's kind of there she comes. But so they have tried for years, and I think that is changing now, because I think there is a real awareness as to, with obviously cotton posted in Scotland, I think there is a real awareness as to how massively damaging fabrics is. And this is not talking about, and I've been in conversations where they just go, tartan thingies, don't even go there. This is like, fabrics are massive, 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 massive. And it's not just what we wear, it's this protection for home, and talk about cars being electric, so much oil and fabrics in cars, as I say, the NHS. When you start looking at that, you go, oh my goodness, how much oil do we want to make people lie in when they're, poorly? So I think there is great organisations out there. We're working with the likes of iBioIC. It's a bioengineering kind of academic industry facility where there is huge developments happening, and we're working with Johnson's Belgium, which is really exciting because they're obviously one of the biggest in the industry, on how we can start showing the potential from natural fibres and the potential from reshoring a lot more of this on here, not just for what we wear and the icon that we're world renowned for. And I think it will come, Camilla, but there has been people trying relentlessly, and I think sadly there was just this kind of, small economic contributor. We're looking at whiskey, we're looking at oil and gas, we're looking at tech. We had some unicorn companies, and it was all about them managing and siloing their funding, shall we say. So I totally agree, and I think we have this conversation a lot with consumers, and it's taking a little bit more time. So we kind of tend to buy on a kind of cost and convenience basis. And I think you're finding there's a lot of brands out there now who are being so transparent, supply chain maps, their badges of honor, things that we do. And when you spend a little bit of time getting to know a brand, quite often they're already, being transparent with you. And that is an email them, message them. But I totally agree, there should be a framework in there. And I think that will come now. It has to come now because it's such a big fundamental piece across several sectors.
I think it also, I hate to say this, I've got to wind this up with sort of a closing thing in a moment. But I think also, and this is Christopher, the marketeer, I think if we can come up with the right wordings that we all start to use around eco fashion, or whatever you want us to be calling it, so that we start getting it into everybody's heads, I think that will help. Because that I think will help. So just as a finish up for everybody, could you, Siobhan, let's start with you. What do you see in 2022? What do you hope will be coming for you within fashion and within all of this space? Are you going to be seeing this more as a bespoke couture situation with a controlled manufacturing, slow fashion model?
Yeah, absolutely. And we're actually building a thing on my site at the moment where you can design your own outfit, and then again, that's just pushing the made to order. We'll only order the textiles once you've placed your orders, so we're not ordering every single batch of textiles and holding it. We just order it on a made to order basis, so that we're only using really what we need. But just touching on again what Claire was saying there, that the creative industries they do get overlooked, and I really hope that's what I would like to see change next year, certainly. And I think that is what's really special about the Scottish fashion industry, is that we all actually work together. Like Chris was saying, we come together and work together on things rather than trying to do things ourselves. And Claire and I, we both work with Tartan, but in no means are we competitors, because I bought from her, she's bought from me, we've got the same end goal. So I think that's what's really special about the Scottish fashion industry, is that we support each other. we'll work together to make things happen.
So, Christopher, where are you hoping to see everything go as we get my sirens in New York go rushing by?
Very urban, yeah. It could be an eagle for me, but I think in 2022, my hope is that partly exacerbated by COVID, but and what's happened with lockdown. But a politician said to me recently, "Stop asking for permission." And I lost patience. And I think what I lost patience with was this sort of seemingly never-ending blocked roads and like, you know, so I started doing that voluntary research, and we opened it up to anyone who was free in the industry could pitch in, and we had comments and responses from Johnstons, from makeup artists, from museum fashion workers. And one of the issues which Claire touched on historically has been that, you know, it's been seen as a small value exporter, 300 million a year. So all the government reaction has been based on that. Well, there's 2 mills that turn over that between them. And there's, you know, 30,000 people that work in the industry. So the new data that proves factually that it's worth over 2.8 billion, then suddenly we're needing to update all the government policies, because that's not up for discussion. That's a fact that's published by government. So once you start to see that change come through, I think it'll be really exciting. And also, I think, you know, we want to see SRD's festival happen again. We want to take this message on the road around Scotland and look at consumer development in terms of affordable fashion in high street spaces as well, and what the innovation is. Yeah, well, what the innovation is for fabric around that, you know, and I think change is what we want to see in 2022, and I think that there is a mood around to make it happen finally, which is very welcome.
And from you, Claire?
Yeah, so I think 2 aspects, 2 threads, a warp and a weft, shall we say. One is absolutely how we help inspire around people's conscious consumerism, you know. So as a nation, we did it in the past. That was our, you know, Janie talked in the film, like, we never bought things that were cheap, we bought things that were built to last. So it's really that consumer awareness piece. And I think working with Zero Waste Scotland or other government related to validate, and that's the price point piece as well. If something's paid with a living wage and a locally sourced material made in a slow, kind fashion way, do the math. You're not going to get a t-shirt for £5 and not have exploited the people and planet. So I think that's really important. But also I think the circular piece, the recycling piece. I think we are, as a country, we export pretty much all of our fabric waste to third world countries. It's horrific. So 1% globally is recycled. And I think Scotland, you know, we've got this amazing natural fibres, but it's limited. So we live within our means, but also think as the kind of, you know, pioneers of before, how can Scotland come up with this amazing solution that's really thinking about how we can recycle? So once we've exacerbated the reuse, you know, we reduce what we buy in the first place, but recycling, how can we then start using our textiles creative brains to really tackle that? So I think, yeah, keep inspiring people to think about what we do, but also, you know, 21st century future, how can we deal with this crazy amounts of waste that are already there, you know? So that's what I hope for 22.
Well, I could go on talking to you for hours, and I hope that we can reconvene, you know, before a year and have another conversation around this. It's so important. And thank you all for joining us. You've been a fabulous panel. That was wonderful. It was one of my favorite parts of the conference, I have to say, and so well received by all of us. It was so good to hear the 3 of you speak about the awareness about sustainable fashion, how it's managing to really have such a voice now. In that segment, you touch upon reusing fabric again in different ways. So how how do I, for instance, work with you in maybe a kilt that I have, or do you have a range that has reusable objects that you're taking in and have in your collection already? How are you doing this?
So my current collection is made out of leftover materials that I've had, but if it's again something bespoke that we're doing and you would still like it to be made out of leftovers, I always have leftovers here or there. It means, for example, you might not necessarily get the tartan that you want, but we can look at what's available and make something out of that. Or if you were looking to do something with what you've already got, there's always ways to upcycle and maybe add some applique or embellishment and kind of just inject some fun back into a previously loved garment.
I know, it's rather a lovely idea that you could take that kilt or jacket that that you either had a long time ago or that was your family's and incorporate it in some ways. So that is the labeling that goes with that. Because one of the things we discussed in that segment was, how do we let people know that this is made in a sustainable way and with eco awareness, and if it's recycled fabric? Are you now incorporating as an industry a label? Has that moved along at all?
I mean, labeling as such is more kind of for your composition of what the materials and things are, and my labels we usually say made in Scotland. But in terms of, it's more, I guess, going to like brands' websites and things and seeing their traceability, because a brand should have, if they have nothing to hide, for example, of where it's made and what it's made from, that should be available on the website. And it's just about taking that time to do your research on how things are made and where. And certainly in the likes of, I think I discussed on the episode, was I would love to have, for example, a kilt only be allowed to be called a kilt if it's made in Scotland, which I think is something that would be great. But it's difficult because right now you could only add, for example, you could have the main part of it made overseas and then actually just add the buckles or the fastenings, and it'll be called made in Scotland. So that's really frustrating for brands like myself who genuinely do make in Scotland from scratch.
But that happened for so many years. You have Chinese, with all due respect to the Chinese for making their porcelains, they send over this inexpensive porcelain. They put some soaps in it, which are worth more than the pottery. So then they can call it a made in, Britain, made in Scotland, whatever product. And that I think is wrong.
It's false advertising, in my opinion, because if I, as a consumer, if I see something that says it's made in Scotland, I assume it's made in Scotland from the beginning. So I think it's kind of almost pulling the wool over people's eyes in a way, because you could be a consumer with good intentions thinking you're buying something that's locally made with really no clue as to where it has been made.
I do think that the Harris Tweed orb is a wonderful way of you knowing that that you're getting a Harris Tweed ethos product. There are lots of people who say in the feel of Harris Tweed, blah, blah, blah. But at least, if it's not got that orb, it's not authentic. So I think that would be great if there was an eco stamp or something that could be added alongside your names or below or somewhere. I think it'd be great. So anything I could do to help to amplify that, I'm very keen to do. So what are your plans for this coming year?
So yeah, I'll be doing the Commonwealth Games in July. So we've woven over 1,500 meters of tartan. That's all finished. So we're now making the outfits. I can't quite say what they are as of yet because we've not revealed them. But we've only revealed the tartan, and that's gone down really, really well with the public. So I'm absolutely delighted with the response to that. So fingers crossed that the outfits, when they're finished, will also go down just as well with the public and the athletes. So that's going to take up the next couple of months of my life. And I was working with Glenmorangie last year and again this year on some products for their executives. And so kind of, I guess kind of continuing the B2B side of things is always fun as well, and hopefully we'll be working together on some things too.
Yes, exactly. I'm very keen to see that happening as well. So are there any shows coming up for your, will it be, you've done your winter collection, I'm sure at this point, when will you show your spring?
So I've stopped working seasonally at the moment, and it's more just kind of well, what I'm building with my website actually is a design your own feature. So you'll be able to go on and select the design out of its template of all my most popular designs, select your fabrics, select your buckles, that sort of idea, and it will all generate, so you can play about and design your own kilt outfit. And then that means it gives the customer a bit more freedom to experiment. You know, they might, for example, think they want something, but when they see perhaps the design, maybe not. So it gives them that flexibility of just playing around with colors and ideas for themselves first, and then we're going to have that all 3D rendered, so it's going to look super realistic. So that for me is what the direction we're going in, and plus the collections of reusing materials and things like that. So the silk kilts are actually great because they do work for spring, summer too, because they're super light. And then we're doing
into Kuwait or wherever, where wearing a woolen kilt is a little bit tough.
Yeah. So yeah, and it's something as well that the silk ones, they can be used for a more formal event as well for a female. So
right.
During the day I could wear them with some Dr. Martens and tights and a leather jacket, and they look really cool. But then you could put on a really nice blouse or top and some heels, and they look equally as sophisticated.
Fantastic. Well, I have to tell you, I'm so excited to have been able to be a part of your journey, to watch the first silk. Well, you sent us over a wonderful silver metallic kilt, I remember, in like 2016 for one of our auctions, which is absolutely fantastic, from the runway. And it just was just out of the box, and that was great. And you always are full of so much innovation. So very excited for you, and to be watching all that's going on, and onwards we go. And so to speaking again very soon, and lots and lots of good fortune to you in the coming weeks. Thank you.
Thank you, Camilla.